order the June 10 meeting of the Isle of Palms Planning Commission and acknowledge that the press and public were notified in accordance with state law. First item on the agenda is the approval of our minutes from April 15's meeting. Do we have any motions?
Motion to approve.
A motion to approve, any second?
Second.
Motion and a second, any comment? There being none, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. So we're here for a presentation from the BCD Council of Governments on non-vehicular mobility on the island.
Yep, I'm going to give a quick, just kind of a overview to get us level set, and then I'm going to turn it over to our Council of Governments folks. So this is a project that the city has had on the kind of drawing board for at least 2 years. It is being paid for, funded by the Charleston Visitors Bureau. And as Ron has pointed out, it really was intended to be an effort to kind of identify needs, really take inventory of what we have in place, what we're missing, what would be key to add. And one of the many things that we'll use this plan for is periodically funding opportunities come up through grant opportunities. We have TST funds, CTC funds, various funding sources that each year the staff and the council kind of huddle up and say, okay, what's the next good project that we should target? A lot of those are small buckets of money, and I will say there's not an opportunity to do huge wholesale projects with them, but we believe that if we had kind of guiding longer range plans, we could create a better network and kind of improve our existing network with a tool like this. So the Council of Governments was engaged maybe 6 months ago. They've been doing a lot of background work and really have kind of gotten the product to its, I think, very close to its final stages at this point. My hope was that the Planning Commission would be, you all could be kind of used as a sounding board here at the end and kind of hear where they've come from and where they've gotten to. And specifically, and I'll go ahead and tell you about the homework that we would hope that you all would do was we want this to be a priority list. At the end of the day, the kind of most useful takeaway in the short term for us is a priority list. So we're going to talk through kind of all of what they've done, and then at the end, we're going to ask you all between now and your next meeting to take it back, kind of give it some thought, and give us a list of priorities that you all would individually see as important to the city, and it will help inform the staff and the council going forward as we're taking on these future projects. So that's kind of the goals of today. I'll hand it over to Catherine and Wyatt and let them go from here, and just ask you all to talk into the mics, because it's the only way that the people watching via stream know that you're speaking. And I don't know that it tap on it, Catherine.
We can share.
I don't think it matters if that light, tap that. See, it
That's
probably
all
is
right,
working. Okay.
That's fine. So I'm
Yeah, yours is on.
Yeah, it works, the light just doesn't.
Down, boy, down.
I'm Catherine Basha, the planning director at the Council of Governments for another 48 hours.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
And also a longtime resident down in the
Yes. Yeah,
Wildwood
I've lived on the
subdivision.
island since '97. I've worked at the Council of Governments since '97. I'm just going to semi-retire, kind of be available to help them with wrapping up my projects that I've already been involved in. So 42 years of public service is enough, I think. Anyway, so we started this project a couple different ways. We had an intern go out with an app that we had developed where he could walk every sidewalk and look at every path and document the condition and take pictures. well, with the app, so it's all, we have all that inventory now, that we'll turn over to the city. Then we did some public outreach, we met with, that's where I think I met you, down at the chamber, we met with the safety committee, we did a public survey that was distributed, and then we had an open house last October to gain input. So we've taken all of that information, looked at the public input on what the projects are, or what people's concerns were, and then kind of mashed that with what we saw in terms of actual, infrastructure on the ground to come up with this list of priority projects. We tried to group them by the types of projects they are. And as Douglas said, some of these are major projects, some of them overlap with one another, and then some of them are what we call low-hanging fruit, so that if there is a small grant available to go out and do a couple of additional crosswalks or things like that, that those can be put in place. But we went out with the intention of documenting what exists, where are there gaps, where are there existing facilities that really need to be widened, addressed, repaved, and even with the public input, a lot of the projects that came out are things that you already have on your radar or have funding for. So that's where we're at this list. We've done some preliminary scoring of ourselves, by ourselves on the technical aspects. We've kind of given on the sheet that I gave you what those primary scores look like, but what that does not reflect is once we have your priorities identified, then we're going to work with the engineers to get some cost estimates, because obviously cost can contribute to what's feasible and what's not feasible, and will help us to kind of divide up the final list based on what's the easiest for the city to accomplish or not accomplish. But we did, I guess the scoring that we currently have, it does take into account, we looked at the rights of way to make sure there was right of way to do these things where people say, oh, just widen it. It's like, well, we really don't want to have to get easements on people's property if we can avoid that, from a time and cost perspective. But that's basically where we're at with this. That's where we'll have homework, unless you can go through these 52 projects, and identify what you feel are the most 5 important ones to do. I'm gonna hand you out the scoring sheet just so you can see what criteria we use to score it. And Wyatt has put space on the bottom of it for you to, space for you to go ahead and you can write your final thoughts on those, and you can keep an extra and turn them back in.
So
that
you
way.
want us to pick 5, not rank all of them?
You don't have to rank all of them. You can just look through all of
Oh,
them.
here, I have one.
But if you have questions
Do
on
we
what
need to
those
say something?
are,
Yeah,
like,
pass them out.
what were people talking about with these? We did bring, and have PDFs of the maps where we can show you, what we were looking at in terms of what the information that we had gathered. So I don't know how much time we have. Are there particular projects you wanted to scan the list and ask questions at this point? Happy to do that.
Well, maybe if we just randomly pick the first one.
Sure.
I'm curious how the scoring went, and I don't know if you got a score of 38, which is pretty high out of a 65. And just curious as to the background of how you came to that, because that'll help us move
Sure.
quickly too.
I'm just gonna
It's
borrow
kind
this
of like-
back, sorry.
We graded.
Sure. So what we did is we looked at, for things like accessibility,
Mhm.
safety, connectivity, the actual design conditions that we took inventory of, the feasibility. We also looked at all of the existing plans that the city has done in recent years where it has talked about a need for some kind of a connection or improvement, or, just making things easier to get around the island. And we gave it a maximum score, but you can see on the right-hand side, the scoring that we did, if it was a really important connection to a destination area like the recreation center or city hall, then it got a 5. If it was kind of within I forget what distance you might have used,
Quarter
mile distance, which is typically what we consider walking distance, it got a 3. And if it was just kind of out there and not really connecting to anything in particular, then it was a 0. At first, when we did it, we had every beach access as a destination, and when you drove the cover, it covered the whole island. So we had to kind of back off of that one. And then with safety, we did look at the SCDOT safety data for pedestrians and cyclists. We maintain that, or we get it from them every year and update it, and we had the last 5 years' worth of data to look at. So we looked at where were there clusters of accidents that happened, or where are there certain like roads or streets where there's, it seems to be more issues. And then the unsafe street segments and unsafe intersections were mostly what people identified through the public survey and at the open house. So that's how we came to those. The gaps in the network, I might have you explain a couple of these, were basically where we had noted, you have a sidewalk that gets to this point and then there's nothing across the street, just kind of where there's some pieces and parts that need to be filled in. One of, I guess an example was, we heard a lot about the bicycle markings coming down Palm Boulevard, that they get to a certain point and then they end. And it doesn't really turn you down to go down to Front Beach or anything. So that would be kind of a noted gap. And then again, we had the public input. And these are the different maps that show the public input where people had pointed those things out. And then again, the next section, the design and condition, that's all based on our field walking every sidewalk and street on the island. That's what interns are really good at. Just to tell them that they have to go down to the beach, they're usually good with accepting that assignment. And we did look at things like, if you're going down the sidewalk where there's vegetation that's overhanging, so people are having to go off the sidewalk to go around hitting their head on a palm tree, or, there's that whole area down, as you get to 41st, that totally floods out. So, when we don't have a drought, there's a lot of times where people have to go walk in the street because they can't get around that flooded area otherwise. And then, as I said, the project feasibility, we're going to get the cost estimates based on the ones that you all identify as priorities. And we'll look at what kind of funding may have already been targeted towards those projects, or we know is readily available. And then we've already, as I said, we scored whether or not we know that there's right of way for those projects or not. And then, again, looked at previous plans. Part of the regional network refers to, is it part of the Battery to Beach network, or is it part of the East Coast Greenway? Because both of those come through. So, if there's a piece that contributes to that, that's also, we thought was an important thing. But if there's other criteria that you want us to score these on, we're also happy to do that. Once we have your priorities and we have the cost estimates, we'll do a finalized scoring, and Wyatt will bring that back to you in July. Right?
Yep.
Did I miss anything?
I don't think so, yeah. Pretty much covered it.
Okay.
I think I figured it out, but what is a Shero? What is
A
Shero?
share is where you're sharing the road.
Like the air, like.
It's where they
yeah,
put the bike path
paint a
on
piece
the
out.
road, paint it, right, and put the
So-
bicycle guy on it so that you're sharing the same pavement.
Yeah, so it's in my layman's terms, it's where you don't have the infrastructure for a dedicated lane. It's kind of a putting a bike lane into a traffic lane or adjacent to a traffic lane just by doing it with paint, really, right?
Right, yeah,
Just
you're not-
guidance, really, or
Yeah.
direction.
yeah.
Kind of like a crosswalk it's just paint generally that's kind of showing you where, but it's laterally along
And
the.
we did get a lot of comments about that, things just needed better paint, you know, because a lot of people just didn't even realize there was a bike. You know, they say, oh, you need a bike lane there, and there is one. They're like, I never noticed it. I guess it's not painted, you know, but paint wears out pretty easily. So that's a low-hanging fruit type of project.
Yeah.
So not just direct the bike over to the side when there's a car coming, because a lot of times they just stay right in the middle of the road. Bicycle.
Especially on Wednesday nights.
Yes.
I was explaining that to him.
But it gives them a little more guidance to move over.
Right, it lets them know that, you know, you might be coming up on a cyclist because they're sharing this part of the road, so you.
It's for both motorists and cyclists.
Yeah.
Motorists, so they're like, all right, there could be a bicyclist here, and then the bicyclist to give them like, all right, you can't be driving in the middle of the road, you gotta be on, you know, this area.
Don't pass on the right lane.
But some of the right of ways are 40 feet and then some are 66 feet. Does that come into play too, or would you do it on a 40-foot
Well,
right of way?
I think what we would look, I mean, DOT has its own standards about that, so we would look at the width of a right-of-way and look whether or not there's a way to put a dedicated lane there.
Right.
And if you can't, that's when we usually defer back to a sheriff,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, I think first option, but also most expensive would be a dedicated bike lane. I mean, that's kind of the Cadillac, but it's expensive and right-of-way and disruption. So it's a lesser, you know, it's a lesser path, but at the same time, it's much easier to achieve that path.
So just looking at the bike map, is there a reason why there's not a bike lane suggested down 21st?
You know, we got a comment about the sidewalk along there, and we didn't get one for a bike path. But there should be, though, isn't there a bike path going down 21st?
I don't know, I just
Because
I
we-
just see
that's
an
a-
incomplete loop,
Or do
that's
we,
all.
yeah, I'm trying to think if we,
I'll have to check.
I don't think there is one marked.
I can tell you there isn't.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a
it's-
separated sidewalk that we just redid, and then there's just pavement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it
And
would
the
help to
bicycle
get people to go down
on the first
waterway if we had
As
one.
heavily as I ride
Yeah.
waterway, that's how they.
Yep.
do that.
And that's exactly why we're, you know, obviously meeting now, is if there's any gaps that you see, you're like, wait a second, that just doesn't make sense. You know, we put this list together based on our field survey. As Catherine mentioned, that was a lot of the analytical data that we did. And then based on the public comments. And so, you know, if somebody didn't put the public comment on there, we didn't really like, you know, consider every single possible street project. We identified the ones that people expressed their concern about, and then you were like, all right, is this actually feasible and all that. So if adding a bike lane on 21st is a project you're like, that makes sense to me, we can absolutely add it. It's
That's a simple ad.
yeah, and I would it will probably have about the same score, just to help you out, as C2.
Right.
That the project, it would have about the same score as that one, just because they're the same corridor.
Yeah, well, yeah, C2 is, and
It's the
for
sidewalk.
instance, we tried to put comments in there too, you know, which the ones that we sent out. We got comments about widening the sidewalk on 21st, and it's basically a brand new sidewalk. So, and my question was.
Or do you make it a multimodal path or
Right,
whatever that means?
Multi-use path, right.
But would you rather funnel people down 21st to Waterway versus going all the way down Palm Boulevard?
I would think,
That path was
I would think
awesome. My family
safety-wise, it
loved
would
that.
be better, yeah.
It's fired up about that
You
waterway
mean,
path.
as far as the bicyclists?
Yeah.
Oh, I would love, and then you're talking about like Cameron and Hartnett, and for a loop for them around Waterway.
No, I don't know. what
Just
the loop
basically
would be.
keep them off Palm.
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. I think it's too dangerous on Palm, especially in the summertime. I wouldn't encourage it.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And that's one of the things we saw in the plans. Like, we saw where there were discussions in some of the plans about we need to discourage the cyclists from using Palm. And, you know, you can put signage up and tell them that they have to go down to Waterway, but you know, how that works, then so we'll check the 21st facility to see how you
And then
could
wasn't
best
there,
put something in there.
I forget who did it, but isn't there a study about Palm and putting paths on certain sides and things?
There
This
is, yeah, there's
separate. This is different.
This is different, yeah. Yeah, that was a DOT kind of conceptual process to come up with what, because that one is a 100-foot wide right-of-way, so there's a ton of right-of-way there, so there's some flexibility, but,
The other option is if there's the room is to waterway, widen the path that's already on Palm into a multi-use path that's 10 or 12 foot wide, if we can squeeze something in there. Because then at least the non-spandex crowd bicyclists might, feel comfortable riding down on that. And it would be safer for them because they'd have enough width if there's people
If it
walking.
were on the ocean side of the street, where there's no streets to cause any problems, you can see that. Much like Ocean Boulevard, I don't particularly think that a Sharrow down Ocean Boulevard's a good idea. It would be nice to create a second path on Ocean Boulevard. And I don't know what the right-of-way is for Ocean Boulevard with those Front Beach homes on
yeah, it's
that
wide. I mean,
side.
there's no,
I think it's 66 feet.
yeah, it's pretty wide.
I mean, that's an expensive project.
So I hadn't really thought about this till the conversation, but if it was mentioned in public engagement, did we weed any of those out? So I mean, I guess that's an example, like Palm Boulevard is on there and identified as a public engagement request. But have we actually said, yeah, we hear you, but we want to eliminate that from the list of potential projects?
The
Did we
one-
do that,
few.
Jenny? A few?
There were a few. The one was where we were getting, people wanted sidewalks down every side street. And the side streets don't have the right of way to do that. So what we looked at, and we prioritized was, there's the sidewalk from Palm to the Rec, but there's nothing from the Rec to Waterway and down that cul-de-sac. There were a lot of
It's
people
a
that made
big gap.
comments about crosswalks from Waterway onto 28th in the back of it. And then the one project was on the, and then I think there were some other people there was like
Yeah.
one person who said, well, there should be sidewalks all the way around the recreation department on all the side streets around it.
So when we looked at the new sidewalk specifically, we did kind of filter those a little bit, just because obviously everyone wants a sidewalk where on the street they live at. And if 6 out of the 40 streets, we identify as a priority or as a project, it's kind of saying, well, what about the other, 30 some streets? So we tried to make it a little bit more selective. We focused on the rec center, 28th Street. We looked at 34th Street connecting to that neighborhood. There was, I think, mention of 25th Street, I'm mixing up the
25th,
names.
yeah.
25th Avenue, which connects into the ADA parking lot right across the street. So that we can prioritize based on existing infrastructure, certain, because of the ADA access, we can be like, all right, 25th Avenue makes sense, rather than, 27th, 28th, 29th, 30, 31, 32, we can kind of use existing facilities and say, all right, this is a network gap, or this is an opportunity to kind of, increase mobility for people with, of all abilities by, connecting to the access point. The Forest Trail, connecting that entire neighborhood by just adding one little sidewalk. It's infrastructure projects like that we kind of, we put a little bit more weight behind them. We included them in this rather than, like I said, putting every single street as a sidewalk, because that's just, the list would be twice as long,
And
so,
you'd be buying a lot of easements,
yeah.
so.
And it just, this is more of a, we'll say a comprehensive list. It's more of something that's that fills in the network gaps, rather than just, every single street.
Yeah, well, because we've consolidated
Yep.
things.
But again, the reason why we're meeting is if you would like to add projects, I took note of the 21st Avenue, changing the Ocean Boulevard from a Sharrow to a dedicated lane or a multi-use path. If there's concerns you have about some of the projects, we're open to hearing them. I will kind of note on most of the bike lanes, we didn't just say it is a Sharrow, just simply, that's typically the most, I don't want to say the most
Cost effective.
yeah, cost effective. So we can remove the Sharrow and just say, some sort of bike infrastructure, if that way you can decide which street you would, all right, this street makes sense for a dedicated lane, this street makes sense for Sharrow. We definitely don't want to pigeonhole the city into saying, all right, well, this plan says Sharrow, we have to do Sharrow now. This list can be
I'm just
changed to
curious,
reflect.
when I first read the word, I was like, what is that?
Yeah.
And then I sort of figured it out, but, the fact that you suggest it means there's probably a good reason. So, I mean, it's extra information, I think I'd leave it in there.
A Sharrow does not make sense for every street. That's for the more
It's usually when you
residential.
don't have the right
Yeah.
of way, or you don't have, you don't have a wide enough sidewalk to be considered multi-use.
Yeah, or if it's a high-speed corridor, a dedicated lane
Makes more
typically
sense.
makes more sense. But those types of conversations would typically happen, not necessarily at this stage, but like once the project is selected as a priority, then you start getting to be like, all right, which infrastructure actually makes the most sense? We're trying to keep it a little bit higher level, saying, all right, the need is there for bike infrastructure, whether it's a dedicated lane, Sharrow, whatever. Then once you are like, all right, this is a priority, let's go ahead and start pursuing funding. That's when we start, the city would start getting the conversation of like, all right, what actual infrastructure do we want here? And there's an entire process for that.
Where does the sidewalk on Carolina come in? The one they're putting in now? Is that the one down there near Anne Marie's view?
So there's discussion about, it's not Carolina, it's Palm.
Okay, I was
The
saying.
one
Yeah.
from Palm, from Carolina to,
It's Carolina, Palm and Carolina.
Along Palm, though.
No, along Carolina.
Austin, you mean?
Is it on Palm? Okay, never mind.
There's-
I'm thinking
there
of the-
is Down Charleston.
Right, I was thinking Carolina.
yeah, it was identified to do one from where you could connect Ocean Boulevard up
Okay.
to, what's that, second or third return, and then come up on Charleston back out to Palm.
Well, and it could be, Suzanne's talking about A1, the first phase of A1 has been,
It's-
funding's been allocated for that, and it's, the neighbors around Carolina and Palm have objected to it, and I don't know if
I
that,
don't
is
know
that,
anything about it, I was just noticing the,
That is,
that's the one, yeah, so that's part of A1. Kind of, the point has been made that only one block of A1 has funding dedicated at this point, and does it make sense to start a project and only do one block at a time, or do you try to get funding,
You're talking about D, that's bike path, you're talking about D1, right?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah,
Yep.
D1, I'm
Same
sorry,
overlap.
yeah, D1.
Yeah, and that's what one of the scoring criteria is if a bike path and a sidewalk overlapped, then we scored it as an overlapping project.
Were they literally
Where you could
overlapping,
do-
or are they?
No, where you
They're
could do
just
them both
along-
at the same
yeah.
time.
So if you did like a complete street project, that could you could add bike lanes, you could add sidewalk, you could do both, or a lot of the streets are overlapping, like have overlapping projects, 41st, 21st, Palm Boulevard, Waterway. So even though we do call out separate projects, bike lanes, sidewalks, widening, a overarching complete street project could consist of all of those projects. So if there is, some sort of complete street funding, and you see that, for example, Waterway, which I know is already in development, Waterway has 5 out of the, 50 projects are overlapping, and, the 5 of those projects are in the top 10, then we know, all right, we really should pursue this grant, because this, if we get it, this one complete streets project could, achieve 5 of the different, priorities that we've identified, address some of those needs. So that's why we didn't consolidate them before. We wanted to present them all at this meeting, so that way you can see how much overlap there are, and you can see, all right, sidewalks here, widening here, complete bike lanes. So it gives you just a little bit more context when we do the scoring.
And this is the map that you all would have gotten, that you have to zoom in on.
And the difference between this map and that map, we did add the scoring on the right side the final scoring that you have on the,
On this sheet.
yes, sir, the 11 by 17. So the 11 by 17 has it by project type, so like the A's and all that. And you can see that it's color coded, so it's a little bit easier to kind of say, all right, the dark green is the higher ranking projects, higher scoring projects. And, you know, we wanted to try to give you it in several different, you know, media versions. So that way you don't have to be, you know, scrolling in on the computer, looking at the map and then looking at your table. We want to try to give you as many possible options.
But I will offer this, oh, you're not here, but if you all wanted larger maps, we can plot extra copies of the larger maps and drop them off. So,
When I skimmed this last night, the one that jumped out at me as being just bold, like a really creative, and I doubt it'll succeed, but D5 was, that was really creative thinking, which is putting a sidewalk between a couple people's, you know, I guess 4 people's houses on, basically connecting Hartnett to 21st, which
You're
is
right.
like out of the
There's
box.
a couple of new houses and there's a couple going up.
Yeah.
I drove down there on Sunday and looked at that. It's like, ooh.
But yeah, getting those neighbors to agree is a whole other thing, but it's really a cool idea and just says that the process was,
Well, the city already
Pretty
owns a
innovative.
strip of land between.
Do we?
In there? No,
In there?
21st and
What did you say? What number was that?
shopping
D-
center. Never mind.
And
delightful
that project that you
5
brought up at the chamber meeting,
Under the
that's on, that
connector.
list is on there,
is
yeah.
is a new
There's
sidewalk.
zero on it.
It has a zero.
All of the planning projects have a 0. We
Yeah,
didn't,
that's
we
what
did
the
not,
ones for going to, yeah, to do it, going into it deeper.
because that's not something we can really score just because it's a planning thing. That's something
Yeah.
that you will.
Years ago, we talked about
Yeah.
alternative routes around the island and evaluating the connectivity of 13th Avenue under the connector over to the land that the city has that goes to 21st Avenue, through those right-of-ways. Again, just kind of connecting the island where that would go a long way to
Under the connector.
well, it's gotta be worked out somehow.
Yes.
Oh,
It's a river walk. It's
So
a-
we
that'd
could
be-
add in
could be
that there's some bigger
No, you'd
planning
have to,
things.
you'd have to
do.
build a platform.
Or a suspended, whatever.
Something.
And again, that's why we
In the
put that
marsh.
one under planning instead of like new sidewalk or something like that, because it does require a little bit more, probably a little bit more planning, literally, and engineering and, forward thinking than just some of these other ones, which you can apply for CTC funding, be like, all right, we're gonna get this funding done. So, that one, the road diet, I forget what the other one is, what's the third one? The
Had to look
bus
that up.
stop.
Pull off at
Yeah,
the
those
park.
require a little bit more, collaborative effort. It might be, a taller task than some of the other ones. Again, that's why they're the planning ones, and we didn't really put them as scoring just because it's, the bus shuttle. A lot of the criteria wouldn't really apply to the bus shuttle, so it's like why even score it? So.
So, on the B6, the Alphonse connector crosswalk and intersection overall improvement.
Right.
That was kind of, again, thinking
Another way
in
to do
terms of
that.
how to take off some of the load on crossing the connector, going from one side of the city to the other, if you will. Go under the connector,
Mm-hmm. So that would
or however you
overlap.
can go around it. But that, we talked about it in one of those meetings. We had a
And the transport,
gondola and
that was the
A funicular,
transportation
maybe a
portion.
funicular would work.
That was out of
there's
the
a
box, that was Marty's fault.
parking lot over here and all kinds of great ideas.
So
Maybe a
Well, there's-
monorail?
Yeah,
I like the gondola.
But there is not a clean connection on the far side from here, to get onto the connector with your bike.
Oh,
It's
you-
basically, if you come off the sidewalk on Palm and you try to turn onto the connector with your bike, you almost have to cross over the connector to get on the other side to.
When you're going,
Or if
Both
you were coming
ways.
off the other way, you wouldn't have, there's no connection really there.
There's
It's-
bike lanes.
It's the turn
along-
lane and the
Oh,
guardrail.
Yeah,
Right.
so the bike
Turn
lanes
lanes
kind of
like-
end at the turn lanes.
yeah, interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
If you walk the bridge, you have to go out into the street or cross through the landscaping to get to the shopping center parking lot when you're coming off of the connector if you're going that
Yes.
way. There's no sidewalk.
And you'll see that
connects to the sidewalk
And that's
on
why,
Palm Boulevard.
that's why we
It's the
put
weirdest
more
thing.
alternatives, because we know that there's,
Yeah.
that
There is
connection needs to be
there is a
done.
new sidewalk on the other side of the connector now by the public safety building that gets you to the sidewalk,
Mm-hmm.
the sidewalk. And then where does this sidewalk end? Right?
That one
Yeah,
we
right.
just
Down here?
passed,
Yeah,
well, it turns into
10th,
a
right?
paved
Yeah.
shoulder, technically.
Yeah.
This sidewalk does. And then the sidewalk on the other side, I think, ends right about 10th Street. But you'll notice that the projects associated with the connector, almost all of them are in the top 10 probably scored. So like, when we did our analytical scoring, because there is just,
It's just around the intersection.
yeah, just whether it's connecting, making that last, connection between, the bike lanes on the bridge versus the sidewalks, or, connecting the sidewalks through, or, safety infrastructure, crosswalks, you'll notice that those projects all rank fairly high because there's just a reoccurring need. And a lot of people said that was a big, between the, that was a gap, one that we noted. There was crash history there. There was the needed infrastructure, unsafe street segments, unsafe intersections. So it just kind of all had a lot going for it, which is why it's, ranked among the higher ones, higher projects, so.
Do the crosswalks, is that a bigger bang for your dollar?
I think it depends on where you're putting the crosswalks. I
Yeah.
think with some of those really key intersections where we need it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think like.
Having
the
high build-
connector, I guess, south.
yeah,
or North would be the priority, down Palm Boulevard,
uh-huh,
down that way.
yeah, because there's the one at 21st,
Because that's where people cross the street.
25th, 28th.
The ADA
There was an odd one the other day I looked, it was like at 31st, but then there's the 34th that goes back to Forest Trail, and then there's nothing until you get down to 41st.
We do have that mapped,
You have the map.
I think, I don't actually think it's on one of these maps. We do have the intersections mapped and inventoried. That will be in the final report. I don't have the map up right now, or I don't have the map with me, but we do map all the, I'll say the marked intersections. So whether it's just two stripes, whether it's the hatching, the zebra, whatever it's called, whether it's the brick, the different surface, we do have an inventory of that stuff. And so your question, which sidewalks, or I'm sorry, which intersections, ones that connect to other sidewalks. So a good example would be 28th Avenue. At Palm Boulevard, that would be an intersection that might have a higher priority than one of the random streets, just because it connects, it's kind of a nexus of two different sidewalks. And, the 25th and 34A near the ADA stations, those might receive a little bit higher priority intersection, weight than just some random ones.
25th is pretty busy, I think.
Yeah, just because of the surrounding infrastructure around it. So that's when we took the destinations. We did look at a quarter mile, and so you'll notice, on the I'm sure you noticed just by walking around, most places are within a quarter mile. It's most of the projects receive that maximum. However, if we go a little bit deeper, when the time comes, this project is selected as a priority, we're going to actually get into, be like, all right, we have these two projects here, which one should we pursue? That's when you would kind of go into it a little bit deeper, saying like, all right, this project's a random intersection, this project connects, two sidewalks, it's an intersection of sidewalks. That one, you can look at the background information that we're providing you along with the report to give you that, that background information to help your decision-making.
Yeah, I was just thinking Palm Boulevard,
Mhm.
people crossing the street to go to the beach.
Yeah.
Is it every other beach access? Where's that?
I don't know.
It's
Yeah, there's
not
not
every
a-
other, it's,
Yeah, there's not, and there was it's a little bit haphazard. It had to do with where the roads lined up well with beach accesses right at them. Had to do with kind of how far it had been since the last one. So there were a handful of planning factors that went into choosing those locations. And we have, over the course of time, ones have been added as a need, but they were supposed to kind of be primary, busy beach accesses, generally aligning with an avenue to create a straight shot.
Yeah, I guess you gotta keep traffic moving too, you can't have.
Yes, that's right.
Here's a dumb question. Is there a single bike path on the Isle of Palms? Besides?
A
the-
single
on the track?
dedicated bike path.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a
Are we
dedicated
saying these are
one.
all new? Like there's nothing?
Well, you've got the
one right
bike
out
there.
lanes, you've got the bike lanes that, the Sharrows, but no, I
Yeah,
don't think
okay.
there's a dedicated, well, unless you go in Wild Dunes.
Okay.
So
I guess-
Waterway Boulevard was actually a grant for a bicycle path, the sidewalk there. 20, 30 years, 40 years ago.
You were able to use the grant to build a whole road?
The
The multi-use,
Sidewalk.
the multi-use
Oh,
path.
the master use path, I was gonna say.
yes,
But today's standards, it's not really wide enough.
not for walking and golf carts, kids on e-bikes.
So I guess,
The recommendation is what, for
To have
two
a-
lane, like two,
Yeah, to have it like a
Two
10 or
lane.
12.
yeah, it's pretty wide.
So
That
C3, improved sidewalk all along all of Waterway Boulevard, now segued into that conversation. That's basically done. I mean, it's
yeah, it's got
new.
'em.
being.
Or was it intention of this to widen it, or to dedicate it, or add bicycle lane to it?
Well, we
It's-
collected the input, they hadn't broken the ground on it, so a lot of people
Okay.
brought it up, so.
So
And
it's-
So you're kind of ahead of the game.
Yeah.
With that one, with one.
We heard you and we jumped right on that one.
Check it.
And it's also, while the project is ongoing, it's always good to still have it called out, to, in case there's ever, funding available, like, to widen it. I mean, even though you might have just finished construction, if there's a certain funding opportunity saying, all right, we'll do waterway, and if you have it identified in the plan, it's like, you know what, even though if they're offering, we might as well accept. So it's good to at least have it identified, in case some sort of funding becomes available. And that's kind of the case for a lot of these. It's why we're including the, this entire list in our report, and then we'll also have another list that's a little bit more filtered, that's like the priority projects that are going to be proposed. We're still including this list, so that way it is somewhere in a plan that, hey, we've identified this as a project. It may not be a priority, but again, if funding becomes available, it's like, well, who cares if it's a priority? Like, if funding's available, let's pursue it. That's why we wanted to compile this list, and have it a little bit broader in base, but still be comprehensive and still reflect, community needs based on the survey, the analytical needs based on our when we did our field survey. So it gives you all the tools you need to implement things in the future.
It'd be nice to have a dedicated bike path on Waterway Boulevard somehow. And much like the sidewalk,
Oh, yeah.
on that side of the street, because there's fewer roads, ingress and egress.
Plus the
on
driveways.
that
Those
side.
intersections, that's true.
They're driveways, but they aren't as heavily traveled as the streets are on the other side for 21st through 41st Avenue. There's a lot of traffic on both side streets. So I would almost modify C3 to be a dedicated bike path on 41st. Is that?
On Waterway, yeah,
That says
that's,
improve a shoulder, but it doesn't really go into.
We do have
That's
waterways, a bike
Oh,
path
that's
on
A9.
a,
A8.
Eight.
That's
Yeah,
a
it
Sharrow,
is.
though.
and,
Okay.
Yeah,
and I
and-
did do a sort where we sorted them by location, so you could see where they kind of all fell, and we can share that spreadsheet with you all
Awesome.
if you'd like.
So Palm Boulevard crosswalks, we have 21st, 25th, 28th, 31st, 34th, 37th. So they are almost every third block, not perfect, but weirdly close. But then there are none until the 41st Avenue curve. And then you have some beyond. But for that busy stretch of Palm, they're pretty much every third block.
Is 42nd down to 52nd pretty much beach access at the end of every one of those? Other than the private street, it's 49.
Beach parking? I mean, there's always an access, yes, there is an access, but they don't all have parking.
A lot of that's
But,
done
yeah.
on Palm.
There's a couple of private ones in there, 47th and 8th, I think.
Yeah, so, I mean, on the memo that we sent out to y'all, it has email addresses. Just think of something you want us to send to you, let us know.
I am
And
curious.
then, like I
though.
said, if you want bigger maps, we can plot those and I can drop them off pretty easily.
You know, I'm
Actually, that would-
curious, if this is a spreadsheet, I'm presumptuous, because I don't really work spreadsheets too much. But if these are cells that are linked to your grades for each individual project, I'd like to kind of see.
The
if you-
full, the square
Yeah,
sheet.
What the
yeah,
true
what-
spread
what
that
the
came
spread-
up with. and
Yeah, how'd you
everything.
come up with 38 points?
Okay, yeah.
Because it just
Yeah,
means
we
38.
just hid them so that we could
Well,
print
of
it.
course, well, no, yeah, oh, it would be, you know, and you
It
wouldn't,
is
you
very
wouldn't want to
wide.
cut down the forest of trees to print that out for us, but it's helpful for us when we're gonna be
Well, we can
deliberating
send
this
that to
next
you
month.
as-
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, just as a
and-
PDF or something.
Can we have the Excel file?
Yeah, I can pull the Excel file up right now. I will. It is. It doesn't give like it gives the scoring. You know, we
Right.
just add it all up, but it doesn't give like a justification of why
Well,
we
no,
did
just-
that.
We can figure that
Um,
out. just
So
how you
yeah,
scored it.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it is. A lot of it's based on the GIS data. So we, you know, when I had the Excel table open, you know, I had it on the one screen and then I had the GIS on the other. I'm like, all right, this sidewalk is this condition, we're gonna score it this. So a lot of the, you know, it's gonna be big Excel table. Not all of the projects have a score for all of the criteria. For example, the universal design and conditions, if it's a new infrastructure like the bike lanes, we can't really assess, is it sidewalk, you know, what's the sidewalk width? Is it adequate? Because it's a new facility.
All the safety issues. too.
So, exactly. Are there impediments? Well, it's a new facility, so no, there's no impediments yet. So that's where, when you look, there, you know, there'll be several sections that are blank and,
If you're uncomfortable
still-
sharing it, I get it.
oh, no,
Yeah, but
it's,
it's all, it's
Yeah,
still all
it's gonna be in the
more helpful
report
for us
anyway.
later when we're trying to,
Sure.
how did that number come about?
No,
It
that's
is-
fine.
That's, there it is.
And you'll see where there's those gaps, like
Sure.
the cost column's not filled in yet.
Yep.
Things like that.
it's just
Oh, we
taking
don't
a
worry
second to
about
load. I'm trying to, yeah, there it is. All
It's
right.
that big.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, it kind of goes on and on.
Yep.
Well, we could plot one that's probably the size of the map.
So you can see all of these blank ones right here. There's the Bs. You can see the labels on the left. And
But we'll send you that. That's
Yeah.
no
Yeah,
problem.
that's helpful information too.
Perfect.
I prefer.
Doesn't make a pretty
Actually,
presentation,
you're
but it's
gonna,
helpful. when
you're
we're-
gonna
Yes, sir.
see that if you see down the bottom, if we send it to you, there's 3 tabs, so that's where we took them and we
Right.
did them by
Cool.
type, by sections is where we basically looked at where they overlap
Yep.
within the different segments of the island, and then the internal scoring is where we added the scoring table. So you'll have all 3 of those.
When you said that there's a final report, I didn't want to suggest what I'm suggesting, but it sounds like you do have a little bit more work to do
Oh,
to
yeah.
pull it all together. So that's why I asked the question about, are there any other bike lanes? So I guess when I see the map of let's just look at the new the sidewalk improvements, I'd love to know where the rest of the sidewalks are that we're not going to improve are. So you can see like the whole sidewalk network. If there's an easy way to show that,
have
like
on
turn
the
that
map.
layer on.
yeah, actually, I mean,
Or
we
whatever.
do have one of the maps in.
And then
I can-
the whole bike network, not just where you're improving it, but what, you know,
What the only bike is right here.
that's why I
Yeah.
asked,
Yeah.
so.
So if you look at the map on the screen, I'm gonna
We can send this.
all of the black lines are the existing sidewalk infrastructure. So we do have that mapped, and yes, we can show where. That's how we identify the gaps. So you can see, as an example, right here, there's sidewalks going up to the rec center. the gap would be, you know, kind of continuing on to Waterway Boulevard, as an example.
Yeah, and I always suggest that if it's helpful, because I would like to see the whole network to know
Yeah,
where.
no, we have all these maps we
Yep.
can share with you too.
Yep.
Happy to share anything.
So in terms of, I think we had talked about you all scoring these and providing them back prior to your next meeting. The alternative would be you will discuss them at your next meeting and score them after that meeting. But the goal was to have their report kind of bundled up and before council, I think in August?
August.
In August.
But that will determine, if you would like to you know, if we would like to discuss some of these projects, or you were asking about the maps, if you want to score them at the next meeting, that might push that date, you know, to
I'd be
September.
happy to do my homework and submit it and be done.
Yeah.
Is that kind of consensus that
That's fine, based upon. the
we'll send
information
you
sent.
the information requested today, and then you will, and it's, you know, as simple as just a priority list,
Yep, the top 5 at the bottom.
top 5.
So if you would like to put it in an email and send us the top 5, if you would like to add comments, you know, we provided you with the list in case you wanted to go ahead and knock it out today, which would have been great, you know. But if we understand that, you know, this is a lot to digest, so we wanted to, if you would like to submit the top 5, add comments. If there's any other comments you would like to add besides just on your top 5, you know, we'd love to hear them. That's the whole reason why we're meeting. And then once we get those comments back, part of the scoring criteria that is not on this list is we will take, you know, say every planning commission makes 5, you know, does their top 5. We will take those, we will add them up, normalize them, and then we will add those scores to the scoring that we have there. So that way we can then get all right, we've done the analytical side, we've done the public participation side, now we've done the, you know, the city planning priority. We're taking all that into consideration and putting together a final score that we'll have for you in July. So,
All right, we got a Ways and Means meeting about to start, so
We've got a quorum, so.
we have a
having
quorum,
double
so we need
meeting.
and we need to rearrange quickly, so let's,
Okay.
Well, appreciate you.
Can you email us this?
Sorry?
Will you email us this score sheet?
yes, sir. Yeah,
so score sheet,
I got the scoring
maps
sheet,
of existing,
the Excel sheet.
we'll put together
and the
a
Excel
folder.
sheet.
Yeah, and then if we're missing anything, we just drop it in, and we can share a folder if that works.
Thank you, guys.
Yep, that'd be great.
Motion to
Thank
adjourn.
you.
Thank you very much for coming. So we just need a motion to adjourn.
I already done for you, Ron.
Oh, you
Second.
did? Oh.
They did.
All in favor? All right, we're done.
Thank you all.